He was christened in honor of his older twin brothers, who had died of measles in 1923. Human rights organizations all over the political spectrum have denounced him, saying that he died without admitting that he was aware of the disappeared persons and kidnapped children. Although he was an anti-communist, his regime maintained good relations with the Soviet Union and China. Trade ties with both countries were expanded under his leadership. On July 5, 2012, he was convicted and sentenced to 50 years imprisonment for his participation in a scheme to steal babies from parents detained by the military regime. 11,000 Argentines applied for, and received up to $200,000 as monetary compensation from the state, for the loss of loved ones during Videla's military dictatorship. During his administration, the foreign debt quadrupled, and the gap between the upper and lower classes became much wider. His regime ended in a tenfold currency devaluation and one of the worst financial crises in Argentina's history. On May 17, 2013, it was reported he died of natural causes in his sleep while serving his prison sentence. An autopsy showed he died from multiple fractures and internal hemorrhaging caused when he slipped in a prison shower on May 12. Upon the death of President Juan Perón in July 1974, his widow and vice president, Isabel, became president. Videla headed a coup against her on March 24, 1976. A military junta was formed, made up of himself, Admiral Emilio Massera, and Brigadier General Orlando Ramon Agustín. The post-dictatorship government began prosecuting high-ranking officers for crimes committed during the dictatorship, in what was called the Trial of the Juntas, in 1985. Videla was convicted of multiple homicides, kidnapping, torture, and many other crimes. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and was discharged from the military in 1985. The coup that brought Videla to power had been in the works since October 1975, and the United States Department of State found out about the preparations 2 months before its execution. Henry Kissinger met several times with the leadership of the Argentine armed forces after the coup, urging them to destroy their opponents quickly before backlash from human rights abuses grew in the United States. Videla's family were prominent in Argentina's San Luis province, and many of his ancestors held high public offices. His grandfather, Jacinto, had been governor of San Luis between 1891 and 1893, and his great-great-grandfather, Blas Videla, fought in the Spanish-American Wars of Independence and had also been a leader of the Unitarian Party in the San Luis province. According to human rights groups, an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 Argentines disappeared, while in the custody of the police or the military. Among the victims were 2 French nuns who had taught and cared for Videla's disabled son, Alejandro. Between 1,500 to 4,000 were drugged and loaded into military aircraft, stripped naked and then thrown into the Rio de la Plata, and the Atlantic Ocean to drown. In the book, Disposition Final, by Argentine journalist Seferino Rieto, Videla confirms that between 1976 and 1983, 8,000 Argentines have been killed by his regime. The bodies were hidden or destroyed to prevent protests at home and abroad. He also mentioned that female guerrilla detainees allowed themselves to get pregnant because they thought they wouldn't be tortured or executed. But they were. The children they had in prison were taken from them, illegally adopted by military families of the regime, and their identities were hidden for years. He was put on trial on July 2, 2010, on new charges of human rights violations regarding the deaths of 31 prisoners who died under his rule. 3 days later, Videla took full responsibility for his army's actions during his rule, saying, "I accept the responsibility as the highest military authority during the internal war. My subordinates followed my orders." On December 22, 2010, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He was ordered to be transferred to a civilian prison immediately after the trial.